Until the latest of our world conflicts, the United States had no armaments industry. American makers of plowshares could, with time and as required, make swords as well.
I was in the United States Army. I served in the Air Defense Artillery Corps.
I served in the United States Navy.
We have been compelled to create a permanent armaments industry of vast proportions. Added to this, 3.5 million men and women are directly engaged in the defense establishment. Now, this conjunction of an immense military establishment and a large arms industry is new in the American experience. The total influence, economic, political, even spiritual, is felt in every city, every state house, every office of the federal government. We recognize the imperative need for this development, yet we must not fail to comprehend its grave implications.
In my opinion, the United States tries to portray itself as the knight in white armor, coming to save the day, while the peoples that they are trying to save from themselves don't appreciate our involvement in their countries, and would prefer that we allow them to live the life that they have. Whether it's bad or wrong or indifferent, the United States involvement in those countries is perceived by the local population as meddling into their personal affairs.
Now the trumpet summons us again. Not as a call to bear arms, though arms we need. Not as a call to battle, though in battle we are. But a call to bear the burden of a long twilight struggle, year in and year out, rejoicing in hope, patient in tribulation, a struggle against the common enemies of man, tyranny, poverty, disease, and war itself. Can we forge against these enemies a grand and global alliance, north and south, east and west, that can assure a more fruitful life for all mankind? Will you join in that historic effort?
Should we be in other areas, troubled regions in Africa, Darfur, Somalia, rather than the Middle East? I don't know. Our economy is based on us being able to have oil, produce oil, use oil. So the Middle East makes sense. But the areas of Africa also make sense because those are main shipping routes. And if we don't have the main shipping routes to get our products across to everybody, I guess we're pretty much at a pass, and we're going to pay the extra prices for those products.
Long history of the world, only a few generations have been granted the role of defending freedom in its hour of maximum danger. I do not shrink from this responsibility. I welcome it.
I think the United States government does have secrets from the average citizen, and I don't think that's wrong. I think each government needs to have, or the government needs to be able to operate in some cases in secret. I think there was more than one shooter in the Kennedy assassination. I think that President Nixon and the Watergate scandal, he just messed up and didn't talk to the right people and followed some wrong advice, and then once that wrong advice was followed, he had to live with it and got the punishment that came for following that wrong advice. The initial decision by President Bush to attack after 9/11 was appropriate. His lack of leadership is more visible in that the intelligence agencies were not able to prevent it from happening. Everybody involved in that operation in 9/11, involved in the airplanes, were either being monitored by the government, or the government knew that they were in country, and yet they were allowed to roam the country as they saw fit. So it was the decision to attack Afghanistan and eventually Iraq were appropriate, but they were too late in coming. They should have been done way before the 9/11 attacks happened.
In 1950, even at the start of the Korean War, the national defense budget was $50.2 billion. Going by today's current value, that number would be around $400 billion. In 2009, Congress released a national defense budget at $1.14 trillion, nearly triple the defense budget set in 1950, which is nearly double the budget set currently for education. In this chart, shown by Congress, 19.4% of the nation's budget is spent on national defense. But on an undocumented chart, taken a year later, shows national defense has 29% of the nation's budget.
And so, my fellow Americans, ask not what your country can do for you, ask what you can do for your country.